Hey, 30-06 John here, and today what we're going to be reloading is 38 Special. This is going to be geared towards people new to reloading and shooting. This will give a step-by-step process. The first step in reloading is, of course, to have your reloading data. It's always nice to have a reference manual in front of you. Pictured here are some good reloading manuals. This is a Hornady handbook, 11th edition. This came out here about a year ago. This is the Lyman 50th edition. This is the Spear number 15. They all have reloading information in here besides data, but just how to reload. The Spear, of course, has a reloading step-by-step checklist and case trimming. It gets in pretty good detail here. Explains the dies. If you're not familiar with reloading, it's always nice to have a reference manual like this in front of you. So for presses for today, we're going to be using this inexpensive Lee single-stage press. I have it bolted to this piece of wood, and this wood is C-clamped onto my reloading bench. I have this Lee powder thrower attached also. Usually I would be using a turret press that uses a tool head like this. All the dies are in one tool head and the tool head rotates. Or I'll use a progressive press. But today I just wanted to show how to use a single stage press. For new people getting into reloading, don't want to spend a lot of money. This press here is about $40. Also, the ability to mounting it on the wood, C-clamping it to a table, doesn't mean you don't have to have a permanent reloading setup. You could take it down and put the stuff away when you're not reloading. Also, I'll be using this Lyman digital scale. Works good. Not too expensive. Now for reloading dies, I'm going to be using this Lee Deluxe 4-die 38 Special set. As most people know, you can also load 357 Magnum with it. So it makes it pretty versatile. Comes with 4 dies. A carbide factory crimp die, sort of nice. A powder through expanding flaring die. A carbide sizing die. Whenever you buy reloading dies, if you're reloading straight-walled cases, always try to look for the carbide sizing die. That way you don't have to lubricate the case when you resize it. In bottleneck cases, you almost always have to lube the case. In straight-walled cases, like a 38, 357, 9mm, you do not. Also, we have a bullet, seat, and fee die. Also, this kit comes with the shell holder and has a little scoop with it if you want to not weigh your charges, but we're not doing that. The reloading dies come with instructions. Pretty nice. It shows you how to set up each die. If you're not familiar how to do it, it gives you step-by-step instructions. And it's nice to have that. Here's the physical dies here. I've used them before. They work pretty good. Sort of nice that Lee throws in the factory crimp die. That's actually sort of nice to have. In a lot of handgun die sets that aren't Lee, different brands, you have to crimp and seat the bullet on the same die. Having a separate stage for that, 2 different dies, gives you, to me, a little bit better quality overall reload. For our load data today, we're using the Hornady manual, and we're shooting a 158 grain copper plated lead bullet. The lead bullet is 4.4 grains of Winchester 231. We're going to be loading 4.2 grains of Winchester 231 with this bullet. For components today, of course, we're using hydrogen HP38. This is the same as Winchester 231 powder. Both powders, if you look at the Hydrogen's website, which carries the load data for Winchester, they have the same charges. These are the same powder. For cases, I just have assorted cases. Some of these are actually 357 Magnum cases. We have to make sure we're not grab a 357 Magnum case by accident. That would screw things up. Here's the physical differences between a 38 Special and a 357 Magnum case. The 357 Magnum case is just a little bit longer, but is loaded to much higher pressure. 38 Special is actually loaded to a very low pressure round. These cases have been tumbled in a vibrating tumbler with corncob media. For bullets today, we're going to be using HSM brand 38 357 Magnum 158 grain flat point plated bullets. These are basically lead bullets that are plated with copper, much softer than a regular jacketed, which has a thick jacket bullet. For primers today, we're going to be using CCI small pistol primers, size number 500. One thing I do want to point out is that a full jacketed bullet, the diameter is 0.357 for a 38 Special and a 357 Magnum. But when you're shooting a lead bullet, the actual diameter is a little bit bigger because it's a soft lead, 0.358. Both work fine. You just have to realize that when you're shooting a revolver or a lead bullet for a pistol, it's going to be usually 1/1000th larger. The first step is to insert the shell holder. This holds the case around the rim. Slide it right in. It's always best to use the shell holder that came with the dies or the same brand as the dies. So if you're using a Lee die set, use the Lee shell holder. If you're using RCBS dies, use the RCBS shell holder. Let's start with the resizing die. Resizing die has a decapping pin there sticking out about 1/4 inch. That knocks out the old primer. Just screw it into the top of the press. And you want this just to kiss the the top of the shell holder. When you're there, it shouldn't be hard. It should be just start to touch it. Close the locking ring. And there we go. So what I'm going to be doing here is reloading 12 rounds using a bullet tray here. It's nice to have to simulate using a single stage press and when you're loading up a bunch of ammo. Alright, ready to deprime and resize. Stick the case into the shell holder. Run the ram up. The old primer falls out. You can feel the pressure of the resizing. When you look at it there, you can see that the old primer has been knocked out. Let's do the rest. If you look at the primer pocket here, you see sometimes a little burnt ash in there. There's a little tool you could buy to clean primer pockets. Just put it in there and twirl around a little bit. Cleans out a lot of the ash and residue there. Those don't have to be super clean, but a lot of people like to do it. If you reload the same case, same brass, multiple times, it's nice to do it, but it's not really critical. Alright, we have all of our cases deprimed and resized. Next step is priming. So for priming, today I'm going to be using this old Lee Auto Prime. You can still buy these. They're pretty nice little tools. Basically, You put the case in here, put the primers in this area right here. You push up with this lever and it primes them. Usually I prefer to do it on the press itself, but this press doesn't have a priming arm on it. That's one bad thing I sort of don't like about this press. So if you get this press, you need a separate priming tool. So when you put the primers in, you make sure that this is the side that faces up. The other side, like that. If you see a primer like that, that's the wrong way. Then you put the lid on it so you don't lose any primers falling out. You ready to start priming. They're pretty easy. You shake until primer falls in the pocket down here. Put the case in. Throw the lever. Got it primed. Real important that the primer is flush with the top of the case or slightly below flush. That's all there is to it. Let's do another one. You shake it to make sure there's a primer that falls down into that little pocket right there. Put the case in. Another one done. All my cases are now primed. Once again, you feel to make sure that they are all just slightly below flush. Our next step is flaring the cases. This allows the bullet to be seated easier. I'll give an example. This case has not been flared yet. If you try to put the bullet into it, it doesn't really fit in there very good. Well, this case has been flared. You can see a slight flare on the case there. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. When you seat the bullet, you can tell that the bullet is started in there. So that's what you want. You don't want to flare too much. That just overworks the brass too much. But just so you can seat the bullet and doesn't shave off any of the bullet on the sides. So to set the seating die, put a brass in, get the seating die, screw it in. You want to run this all the way up. When you screw it in, you start feeling some resistance there. You want to give it a couple of turns, then lock down the die. And check it, make sure it has enough flare. Like I said, you don't want too much flaring because that just overworks the case. But the goal is so you can seat the bullet without shaving lead off the side. Once you got your flaring die set correctly, you just want to keep on doing all the cases. Make sure you run the ram all the way up so you get the full flare. Okay, once you're all done, inspect your cases. Make sure they all look like they have a nice flare on them. These all do. All right, our next step is to put powder into the cases. This here's a little bit of trial and error. I have a electronic powder scale here. So you follow the calibration process for your scale. Make sure you throw the proper charges. I've done that already. What we're using here is a Lee powder thrower. So we're using HP 38, Winchester 231. Pour some in the hopper here about halfway. Then what you need to do is takes trial and error, but you have to adjust this adjusting screw right here until you throw the proper charge as you weigh it on the scale. So let's do that. So what you need to do, it's trial and error, is you need to throw a powder charge. You need to weigh it and see if you're getting the charge that you expect. I'm looking for 4.2 grains of Winchester 231 HP 38. We're at 4.3. A little bit high, so you have to adjust this lock ring right here, give it about maybe a quarter turn in. That reduces the charge. Let's try it again. Take the old powder or the charge, throw it back in. Let's weigh another one. Oh, a little bit too low now. All right, looks like we finally got the scale adjusted right. I also do 3 or 4 loads. Do this 3 or 4 times. All right, I've done this a few times. Pretty consistent. To be completely honest, this powder thrower is not super accurate. Usually it throws within 1/10 of a grain. This is a 38 special load, not max. So the powder charge weight can be off by 1/10 of a grain and it'll still be fine. So let's throw powder charges in our cases. I'll take one case at a time, throw a powder charge in it. Put it back in the bowl or tray. One thing you don't want to do is double charge a case. That could blow up the gun. I know it looks like there's not much powder, and a double charge wouldn't cause that much of a problem. It will. I'm going to throw a double powder charge in this case, just so everyone can see it and see what it looks like. Now when you look at it, there's a lot of room in that case, so if you're not familiar with it, you could assume that it looks right. That's a little bit of a problem with a 38 Special 357 Magnum case like this. There's actually a lot of case capacity. Using a powder like this, you can double charge a case and not realize it. But this is twice as much powder as it should be in there. This should be about 8.2 grains, 8.4 grains, a little bit high. Doesn't look like much powder, but you can certainly damage your gun, hurt yourself. Not good to do. So it's very important not to double charge a case. Now I charge all the cases with powder. One good thing to do is to look at your powder charges and make sure that they all look the same. If you look at these cases, this case in the bottom right here actually is a double charge. That's a double powder charge right there. It's important to look at all of your cases charged with powder. Make sure they all look the same. Usually get a little flashlight there and look at them. That case there definitely is a double powder charge. When you're reloading like this with a single stage press and you charge all your cases, you just want to make sure you don't double charge them. Let me pour this powder out and throw in a single charge. Okay, now I threw out that charge and put a single charge in. Look at all the cases, make sure they all look the same. So you put a case in, run the ram all the way up. You screw in the seating die until you feel it hit some resistance. That's where the crimp starts. Okay, right there. You back up a couple of turns because we don't want to use this for crimping. Then you lock it down. All right, now we have to seat a bullet to our correct overall length. Once you have the die in and you're not crimping, run the bullet up. Adjust your seating depth with just this top part, not the whole die, just this part here. Adjust it, half-turn increments. We're adjusting this bullet to be seated right in the middle of that cannula right there. That looks pretty good right there. Let's do the rest. All right, I'm checking the overall length. Okay, we are at 1.445. And that's fine. Good thing about a revolver is that it can accept different lengths, as long as it doesn't stick out the end of the cylinder. Whereas a 9mm is a lot more finicky about stuff like that. So this looks fine. Let's do the rest. Alright, once all of your bullets are seated in the cases, take a quick look, make sure they look good. These do. Okay, right, let's put a crimp on them. If you're having an issue trying to identify the seating die and the crimp die, you can certainly look at the picture that comes with the Lee factory instructions. The crimp die is a little bit shorter. So I just want to mention that. The first step is, of course, to screw it into the press. Once you get the die screwed in, down pretty low, run the case up. Make sure this is backed out all the way. This is the seating, or I'm sorry, the crimping portion. Screw it in until you feel resistance. Give it about half a turn more. Seat it. You just feel a little bit of crimp at the very end. When you look at it, you should see a nice little roll crimp there. You can just see it at the very end of the top of the case mouth there. If this was a 44 Magnum or a heavy big Magnum, you want to make sure you got a solid roll crimp so the bullet doesn't jump the crimp. These are mid-range 38 special loads. It's not really an issue. That's plenty of crimp right there. Let's finish the rest. All right, we're done with the crimping. Once again, take a quick look. Make sure they all look normal. They all do. All this ammo is ready to go. I hope everyone enjoyed this video. Got some tips on how to reload 38 Special. Pretty versatile round. If you like this type of content, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. That's all I have for today. Everyone stay safe and have fun shooting. Thanks for watching and take care.